It's Good afternoon, everyone. I, Kuhika Dhingra, welcome you all to the 11th episode of the web series Decoding NEP 2020, brought to you by Edudevs, School of Inspired Teaching and Learning in association with Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham University. With an enriching discussion in the last episode, the deliberation continues on the theme Restructuring the Admissions Process in the Wake of Pandemic. Gracing our panel today, we have with us Dr. Shobha Bagai, professor at Cluster Innovation Center and former Dean of Admissions at Delhi University. Dr. Bagai is an acclaimed program coordinator of BTech, IT and Mathematical Innovations at Delhi University. An esteemed member of several boards, she has been the acting chairperson at Delhi University's Social Center Co-ed School. A vivacious personality, she is greatly admired for her excellent performance and unparalleled wisdom in her field. We welcome you, ma'am. We are honored to welcome Dr. B.L. Arya, Registrar, Amity University, Noida, on our panel today. Dr. Arya holds over 34 years of professional experience, during which he has served numerous federal and state government organizations. His excellent service to the government was recognized and awarded with the President's Silver Medal. His expertise in the management of higher education system and procedure is quite evident from his instrumental role at both government and private universities. We are honored to welcome you, sir. I'm delighted to introduce you to our esteemed panelist, Maheshwara Chaitanya ji, Chairman of the Undergraduate Admissions of the School of Engineering, Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham University. Maheshwara ji has more than 15 years of teaching experience in the field of computer science and engineering. A dynamic expert in his field, Chaitanya ji also serves as the contest director for International Collegiate Programming Contest. His humility, expertise, and ideologies continue to inspire us all. We are so honored to welcome you here, sir. I heartily welcome our moderator for this session, Ms. Devyani Kapoor. A former principal, author, and passionate edu leader, Ms. Kapoor carries over 3 decades of experience in the education sector. A pragmatic thought leader, she is the founder and CEO of Edudevs School of Inspired Teaching and Learning. Accredited for introducing numerous innovative pedagogical techniques, Ms. Kapoor has created new benchmarks in the field of education. Welcome, ma'am. And once again, I welcome all of you who have just joined the session. And now I hand over the baton to our moderator, Ms. Devyani.
Thank you so much, Kuhika, for that wonderful introduction. I warmly welcome today yet another panel of illustrious panelists, people who have not just been a part of the admission process of universities, but have lived through and seen the changes in the various decades. Moving on to the last episode's discussion and continuing with where we left, we see that the postpone of the board examination has created anxiety, created uncertainty among the students. As though the pandemic was not enough, we had this cancellation. But the universities in India and around the world are now preparing for a pandemic-induced delay in the beginning their academic session for the second consecutive year. The first year, we did have the board exams and somewhere managed to work out the admission process. The institutions are preparing now to push back their academic session by at least 1 or 2 months to August or September. There is no official word, though, from the Ministry of Education in this regard. They are also working out new ways to get around their usual admission process. We see that the bouquet of options that ranges from relying on the pre-board results or the conditional admit caste, and we've been discussing about the various options in our last session. Acting VC of the Delhi University, PC Joshi, added that the DU is pushing to admit students on the basis of proposed common entrance test for universities, which will be the parameter across humanities, science, and commerce streams. We will delve into how this will happen, but he wants to keep a 50-50% weightage for entrance exam and the class 12 exam. Now let us hear it out from what our panelists have to say in this regard. Very quickly, I will introduce our three segments to the audience who have joined us for the first time. The first segment is our ice-breaking round, where same question is addressed to all the panelists, where we'll see that what is their perspective over a common issue. Second round is an individual question addressed to one particular panelist, and we seek his perspective on that particular area. The third and the most popular round is our Q&A round, where the audience seek the insights of our panelists. So we will be going in the order of Dr. Shobha Bagai first, Dr. B.L. Arya, and then Brother Maheshwara Chaitanya ji. For the ice-breaking round, you all have about 2 to 3 minutes to answer the question. So over to you, Dr. Bagai. What do you think that how will this situation unroll when it comes to working out a common admission process for the session 2021-22? Over to Dr. Bagai.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kapoor. And I would basically be answering that question, keeping the University of Delhi in mind. See, till last year, what happened was that we always admitted the students based on the class 12 marks, except for certain undergraduate courses, which were more inclined towards certain professional courses. The center for which I belong, so we had BTech was one of them. For that, we had the entrance examination, which was basically conducted only by the University of Delhi. But for the other popular courses, which were the honors courses, which were the BA program courses, which were the BSc program courses, the admissions were always done based on the class 12 marks that the students have scored. So they were always, the negative point of admitting the students to the merit-based was that the number of seats were limited. And, even if you lowered 1 mark, so that would be, lowering just, in fact, 0.25%, you would have a number of students, in fact, entering that bracket, and specifically for the very, high demand courses and the high demand colleges. So at the University of Delhi, it was always felt that maybe the need of the hour is a common entrance test. So when it was announced, before the pandemic had, the second wave of pandemic had set in, and, when it was almost certain that this year at least the board examination will happen, as per the earlier date, it was April. So you could have, there were certain debates, of course, going on that whether it should be completely on the central, the common entrance test, or CUSET, as it is being called in the media. Or should it be a 50-50% weightage between the merit and the CUSET? Now, those were the only 2 options at that instance, which were under the discussion in the University of Delhi. But with the second wave coming in and, the board examination being cancelled and not very certain whether a common entrance test can be held, because to be very fair to the students also, they have already undergone almost a complete academic year when, all their studies actually happen online. Let's be very fair and let's be very honest. When you are so used to a system that, you go to the class, you meet the teachers, face to face, and there are certain queries that you ask, maybe that does not happen with most of the students when you're doing it online. Maybe some of the students are able to cope with that. So it's naturally going to take some time for the students to get used to that method. And on top of that, the board examination being cancelled, and now it's suddenly, if a student has to know that there's going to be a common entrance test, I think that is going to raise the level of anxiety amongst the students. So, the solution that has to come out, this is a totally, unprecedented solution, times. And I personally feel, this is my personal feel, that every university needs to come out with a completely out of a box solution of admitting the students this time, so that I cannot say that all the students, but at least a majority of the students do not feel that they are at a certain disadvantageous level. Now that could also mean that you completely change the process of admissions, you become more liberal. But on the other hand, when I talk, about being more liberal, admitting more students, being a part of the, having been a part of the administration, I also do understand the constraints, one has in terms of the infrastructure, and that infrastructure could be in terms of, your human resources, your teachers, in fact, and having a complete, when you're going online, I just cannot say that, I don't require any infrastructure. Even when you go online for delivering your lectures, for holding your examination, that's a different kind of infrastructure, one is looking at it. So the university really needs to come out, and that could be any university, to come out with a solution which is totally out of box, which is, absolutely unconventional. So one needs to start looking at that. As I said before, that having a combined entrance test was, at least, personally, I always felt was a wonderful idea. And that could have been the way ahead because of the problems the University of Delhi had been facing in terms of admissions. But looking at this time, particularly, when the students are right now at a crossroads, not knowing that, how do they prepare for the entrance test. And like in University of Delhi, you could have a science students getting admitted to an art student, so what kind of the paper would they need to give it? Because I don't think so that you could have, a same kind of a paper for either a science student or a commerce student or an art student. And even in arts, when you have different papers, so that is something I think which will have to be looked into it very carefully before it is rolled out.
Great. Thank you so much. And we'll be coming on certain things again as to what DU has thought about it. And you very rightly said that this is a very unprecedented situation. And considering that there'll be online tests, does not mean that you don't require that kind of a back-end support and infrastructure. Let's hear it out from our second panelist, Dr. B.L. Arya, what he has to say and what his perspective lies when it comes to the admission process being conducted in varied ways. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I go from Shobhaji's point that we have to think out of the box. So this time the situation, since it is not normal, it's an extraordinary, abnormal situation. So we have to think totally out of the box. So, but I would say for all private institutions or non-government institutions, because we are getting the students, but they already applied either in NCR, so in DU or some other institutions, and they are also admitted in our case. So here the situation is, if they are admitted there and they are not getting seat, then they are coming to us. And in that case, sometimes they are asking delay in fees. And apart from that, some of the students who are preparing for competitive examinations, they are going for engineering or medical education. And they are waiting for, say, around 2 months or 3 months. Then they are withdrawing from our cases. So this situation of withdrawal is around 10 to 15% in private institutions. So ultimately, that is the loss for whole of the program period. Since we are not.
Sir, you've spoken about ambiguous, out of the box situation. Why I want you to continue on this is both you and Shobha are talking about out of the box situation. So how will the ambiguity be checked in this? There will be a lot of ambiguity.
So these are the issues. So keeping in view those issues, what we are doing this time, we are conducting some of the tests in our cases for engineering and management. For others, we are still with the board examination basis, merit-based admissions. Whatever the merit is coming, we are admitting the students. Since the seats are fixed, so we will admit to the student to that level. But if somebody is coming at later stage, we can't do any help to them. One thing. Secondly, the students, those who are coming from outside NCR or other states, they are having little bit problem here because sometimes their results are not comparable, or sometimes they are comparable, but they are not to be believed. For example, I say 2-3 states in our country, their results are really in such a situation that when we see the status of the students, how they pursue the engineering or management, they are absolutely at the lowest level. So this situation, we have to again train them. After admission, we are doing that part. They comes under the slow learner category of the student and fast learner category of students. So this sort of situation, we are still working over it and trying to help out the student in this special or extraordinary situation, how best we can help them out. Even financially, we are supporting them. As I said earlier in our discussion, that we are giving a special scholarship whose parents are no more with them or their guardians in this pandemic situation. And we are giving them financial assistance and studentship. So these are 2-3 things we are working over it, and I hope all other institutions are also facing such situation. And student has to see, and the parent has to see of their own, that which is in their vicinity is the best school or best college and best university, so that they can, within their financial structure, they can admit their wards there.
Thank you so much, sir. You have really spoken about that, how institutions need to support. We are just looking at the admission process. We also need to look at that, how we have to think out of the box in terms of supporting, because a large chunk of population has been wiped out, and the spillover has been on the students who've lost their parents as well. So universities also need to look into some kind of a financial support they would provide to them. Coming to Chaitanya ji, I would again want to draw your attention, because in the last episode, you did speak about some kind of a combination, because here we are talking about the challenges that the university admission processes will face. Now, we are very clear, some of the states, how the class 12 exams are conducted and what kind of the results they exhibit, where at times the deserving candidates do suffer. So how would that ambiguity, admission process will happen, you will create a combination. My question is, how will that ambiguity be checked, whereas in the gap between the deserving and non-deserving candidates would be properly addressed, and that the deserving candidate will not suffer due to the out of the box kind of admission process that we are talking about. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for that question. In fact, I think I'll have to continue from where I stopped in the last session. In fact, what Shobha ma'am has rightly pointed, about the out of the box type of an assessment or the selection model, where common entrance may be very, very hard at this point of time across the institutions, because suppose if I have 5 options, then I'll have to attend 5 entrance examinations. And if I want to focus on 3 or 4 different type of programs in the same domain, then I'll have to learn for that. So if from the university point of view, I would suggest my suggestion is always it has to be student friendly, and as rightly pointed out, deserving students are basically the foundation of the any institution, because the moment you talk about admission process can be done in any way, one way or the other. So filling up of seats is one thing, and second is how do you get the potential students so that the output after 3 or 4 years it is good, and that will give us better dividends in the long run. So from that point of view, choosing the right students is also very important. So that will certainly satisfy what you said, the deserving students will get. So I will always depend on more of a kind of interaction with the student, and we can rather than calling it as an interview, we'll have to call it as faculty interaction with the students. And there are universities following that kind of structure where the intake is very less. But from you, if you look from the Delhi University point of view, it may be very, very difficult because it's a gigantic process. So faculty interaction across the crowd is totally impractical and almost impossible. But for the private organization, it's highly possible. But at the same time, the students may not be able to afford that fees, and they will have to depend on the public universities or universities of national importance or central universities. Then for that, they may have to prepare some kind of entrance test, or again, for the private universities, they may have to build up the profile. For example, we have integrated programs, and for that integrated programs, we do have a cluster of faculty members fully involved in interacting with the students, because faculty members are finally the people who deliver the content. So they understand what kind of students we need. So they talk to them and they make sure that the input is good. Maybe they'll have to go with maybe 400, 500 student interviews and interactions, but ultimately the output is really good. So my suggestion for the smaller set of courses where the student intake is limited, it is always better to have a one-to-one interaction, possibly with the student and the parent, because nowadays it's all online and it's pretty easy. And interact with the student, find out whether he's deserving or not, irrespective of the marks, because marks we cannot depend on marks now, and that will certainly help. But for programs like engineering or medicine, they definitely need to depend on the entrance examinations. So that is my take on it.
Thank you so much, sir. As always, you've put it in a real simple way, and my recommendation to all the stakeholders would be that faculty interaction, one-on-one interaction, not just with the students, with the parents as well, should be the key component, because and class 12 marks should then take the last seat, and finally the entrance and faculty interaction should reign supreme. Thank you so much, sir. Coming to our second segment and moving on to Dr. Shobha Bagai, and I'll take it up from where sir left, that Shobhaji, Delhi University is huge. Around 60,000, admissions take place every year. Now, delayed results would lead to delayed university process. As it is, number of days of actual teaching time have been reduced, could be reduced. How would we be tackling when further we are pushing it by, say, about a month and a half? So how would we be doing, justice to the learning process with delayed admission?
Interesting question, in fact. But if I may say so, with the MHRD announcing this year that there's not going to be a board examination, actually puts the university in a little better position. And I'll give you the reason for that. Last year, what happened, we had planned our admissions to take place in April, when the COVID situation became bad and the lockdown started, and it kept on getting pushed. And finally, the session we were able to begin only by the first week of November. So it had got delayed that much. But now, since the position somewhat is much more clear, so we at least now know that the boards are not going to happening. So the admissions, of course, will be taking place, on whatever process X, Y, Z a university takes into account. But at least puts us in a better situation, because I think till last year we had envisaged, that things might get delayed, the board examination might get delayed. And the University of Delhi generally begins in the third week of July. So, it was already anticipated that for the academic session 2021-2022, there would be a delay of 1 month. So, that was already taken into account, in planning the academic calendar for the academic year 2021-2022. The only thing I think we need to see right now is that having, the MHRD having already announced that there's not going to be a board examination, if a decision, because I think as all my panelist members have said that, filling up of the seats, may not be much of a problem, because, you could adopt a process X, Y, or Z. And I would just like to differ in a very small manner from my other panelists, because, when you talk about a deserving student and a non-deserving student, I'm slightly of, a little contradictory view. Being a teacher, for me, all the students are deserving students, right? So, if I'm not teaching the, these sets of, students, if I teach these sets of students, for me, it doesn't make a difference. So, but the idea is that when I am, now we are basically talking about the process after the admissions, when the academic session starts, and how do we cope up with a delayed academic session. I think in that case, the role of a teacher, the role of a mentor, I think it becomes extremely important. That because the time, of course, will be limited, and within that limited time, how you are able to, in fact, engage the students very constructively, with a given syllabi. And again, I'm of a little different view, because, instead of saying, finishing the syllabus, I tend, more to say that, to at least when the student comes in the first year, a teacher should be able to, make the student interested in a subject. And then I think, more than half the battle is won. And that, I think, is the major challenges, with us, the teacher, that is actually happening when we are doing this online teaching, and when the sessions are delayed, and you are not being able to meet the students, face to face. So in that sense, a delayed in an academic session, this year I would certainly feel that, we'll be little better off than what we were last year. Last year, it was absolutely horrible, at least for the University of Delhi. Where you have to, you say admit 60,000 students, but you have more than 3 lakh students, who are actually applying for the various undergraduate courses. And, as Maheshwara sir said, that the faculty interaction, of course, it is something which is very, very desirable, but it becomes very infeasible, when we talk about the, admissions in the University of Delhi. And then there are certain other issues also, when you have the subjectivity into the admissions to some popular courses into the popular colleges, of the university, which comes into play. So the University of Delhi, would like to have an admission process which is as objective as possible. So, I think that will be the way forward, in fact. So delay in the academic session, I would not be worried too much about that, because I certainly feel we'll be better off than the last year this year.
Great. Thank you so much. And very well said that a lot depends upon the educator and how she would be able to, bring student to like a subject and understand a newer stream. My very quick response on from you, I want. I was just reminded that, you know, DU, without bias to anyone, DU is known for its disruptions. So what was the scenario when the DU, you all had shifted on the online mode of teaching? So how did you cope up with that kind of scenario? Because
So
normally, yeah.
So I don't think so. That's very peculiar about the University of Delhi. That's, I think, a human psychology. You know, you're always into a very comfortable zone. So when
Yeah.
you're forced to move out of your comfort zone. So I think in
Yeah.
physics also we have this property of inertia. You know, so
Yeah.
that inertia is there. And specifically, I remember very clearly that admissions last year. So we had shifted the complete admissions online. You know, without the students actually visiting any of the colleges. So there was a lot of skepticism that how it will be done, but I think by the time we finished off with the first cutoff, in fact, all the stakeholders, they were very happy with the system, and not knowing that this year again we'll be facing the second wave of pandemic. In
Right.
fact, unanimous feedback that we had got that this should be the way ahead for the way the admissions had been done.
Okay.
And for the online teaching, personally, in fact, I do still miss out my offline teaching, where I can see the faces of my students, and I can change my style of teaching if I understand if somebody is not understanding a subject or not.
Right.
So
Right.
trying to make it as interactive as possible is certainly a major challenge, at least personally for me as a teacher.
Thank you so much for your insights. Moving on to Dr. B.L. Arya. So I was reading an article in Forbes, and there was a survey by EAB which said that 15 survey was conducted of about 15,000 students, and it said that that there was many low-income students and who were not able to pay the fees. And many universities, as we know, they had shut down because maybe the first generation students were dropping out, and first generation into education were dropping out. Situations were this in 2021, 2020 and 21. Also, on the other hand, the elite schools had an overwhelming situation of applications. So there was a great diverge in the situations. How will the education system as a whole support this? And a lot of students actually took a gap year. One, as Amity, as we were discussing, Amity has provided a kind of a financial support and all. Maybe most other universities were not able to provide that kind of a support. Number one, what was the situation? And two, that what will then your suggestion to those students be who were taking a gap year by force? What should they be doing at this point of time?
Actually, that is not an issue. The gap year is not an issue. Issue is whether they are in a position to financially give the fee as required by the institutions like us. So what we are doing at our place, we are having 4-5 scholarship, different scholarship. Say 100% scholarship, those who are in a bracket of that much percentage, we are fixing each year. Second is again 50% in that bracket and 25%. So these are the scholarship on merit, on admission. One thing. Second is, this is the continuation again in the next semesters and the program. If they are having a certain percentage of that learning process, that whether they are learning at that level or not, we are assessing this learning process every semester. The third one is, we are also asking the banks to support our own students. A loan on very, very nominal interest, that we are already doing with the banks. The other things, we are also asking the state government to support the students who are with us. So 2-3 governments, particularly the Bihar government, is supporting their own students who are studying with us. And Northeast governments, they are having their own scholarship. So the students who are not in a position to pay the fee, they are getting these scholarship and support by their own state governments or by banks and other financial institutions.
So, but then there were many universities, you know, Amity is Amity. Amity is huge. DU is huge. There are universities which are huge. We have that kind of a financial backup. But then there are so many universities who are themselves not financially as strong. So there, I have certain, insights where so many universities have closed because the students were not able to pay fees and they decided to take a voluntary gap year. Now, what is to done? There is a big chunk of such students. What are your suggestions to the governments, to the?
I agree. This is the ground situation and this is the reality of life.
Yeah.
But the thing is, at least we require some minimum financial support to run the classes and to students who can come and stay with us. For such students, I'll give an example with ours only. From Northeast, there are about 70 girls students. They stayed all time with us in our campus in Austin. Even today, they are with us. They don't want to go back. So this sort of support we have to generate, whether it is financially little bit difficult. But if this sort of support can be created by the institutions, then something will come out for their own students.
Thank you so much, sir. I do understand that, you know, together governments have to support those institutions, those colleges who are financially themselves facing that kind of crunch, and they survive on the student fees structure. Moving on to Maheshwara Chaitanya ji. Now we were discussing about, and you said that in 2021-22, you recommended that the institution, the campuses should not run open. Whereas we had Dr. B.L. Arya who said we are partially trying to figure out a structure where we will be making it semi-functional. And we'll have to live with these kinds of, wave, first wave, second wave, third wave, or maybe there might be another fourth wave. Now, post-COVID world, what kind of recommendations you would suggest, or what kind of a system you would envisage, considering, campuses have a huge footfall, and in terms of medical teams being available, isolation facilities, and then there are residential, campuses. What preparedness, or what are those pointers which you would suggest as or an SOP to the campuses who want to semi-function themselves? Yes, sir.
Institutions with larger, residents. For example, we do have almost like 5,000, 6,000 students who are residing in the campus. So institutions like, us having a large number of residential students will have to take a lot of effort. First thing is that the travel itself is going to be really, really risky. Unless otherwise, we have to make sure that those who are traveling or those who are willing to join at the campus, they have to be fully vaccinated. That is first thing. That is what the Western world has adopted now. Second thing is that, as you said, we have to make sure that there is no gathering in the campus, and 100% we cannot call all the students at one point of time. We have to have a staggered approach where, we call the research scholars or the PG students or the final year students. So the most importance is given to those who are about to pass out, and those who are having their project work or kind of viva voce or lab experiments to be conducted as part of the degree completion. And naturally that is the way forward. But At the same time, from a totally different perspective, now that, as Shobha ma'am has rightly pointed, now it's almost all are well versed with the digital or the online kind of education. But education is not about just instruction, right? It is not just about delivering the lectures, but it has also something to do with the holistic approach of teaching in the class and talking to the students physically, and a kind of exchange of the ideas or conversations. It is not part of the syllabus, but that is the connect, that the backbone of the holistic education. Otherwise, again, the teachers will be like instructors, like in online class videos. So for that to happen, I think universities, the campuses will have to adopt some way to make sure that at least a smaller set of students are brought into the campus. And I know the last year the teachers struggled a lot to conduct the JE exams and CBC exams, and
Right.
something like that will have to be adopted. But now the situation is different, and now that most of the people are getting vaccinated, and perhaps from depending on the region and the locality, each university and each institution will have to adopt its own methodology, because now the rule is like, whichever is having more than a certain percentage of the TPR, that location will be declared as a containment zone. So that is more challenging if we plan to bring the students back, because we don't know when the location will be termed as a containment zone. So given all these restrictions, it is always better to continue with the online mode, but maybe with the minimum number of students in the campus, those who are really wanting to complete the projects and assignments and other things, and make sure that it is not spreading a lot beyond the point. So that is my suggestion in that.
So I think I'm sure the various universities would have heard and taken a note of it, that like a combination, as even National Education Policy recommends, a lot of internships, it encourages a lot of experiential learning and internships to be conducted. So maybe projects, some group of students could be involved in active teaching, and then a group could be, so we'll have to kind of profile students and create a workable model. But the first and foremost is that we have to ensure that vaccination is being done. But considering that Amity is planning to function in, so I would just want to take a bite from Dr. Arya, that what is their SOP like, and what is their preparedness? What are they? So, Dr. Arya, if you could just reflect on your preparedness.
We are fully prepared. We have all our system at place. And we are planning that even the PhD scholars are coming with all following all SOPs. So that is not an issue. As Chaitanya ji has said, that final year students, particularly the students of law, they are coming for moot courses in groups in the campus, and we are following that SOPs. Not right now, but they came previously, and probably from next month we are hoping that we will do like that. So this is not the situation, and the final year students, particularly where the practicals are required, lab works are required, they have to come in the campus for doing their own practicals. So that part we are fully prepared for that, and I'll hope by means following the SOPs as prescribed for this purpose, if somebody is doing that in the beginning, so we have to follow it, because we don't know where the third wave, fourth wave, fifth wave will come. We have to live with it.
Because thank you so much, because that's very important, that we are talking about the admission process, but we also need to discuss about the preparedness of the universities. And I really don't want to ask Shobha ji about it, because she will be so much under pressure with that kind of magnitude and mass of students walking in. What will the DU be looking at when they talk? What kind of SOPs would there be, or what kind? If you want to give us a quick bite, Shobha ji, before I ask you the next question, have you, like, what is the thought and what is the kind of discussions that are happening in the corridors at this point of time?
The thing is, after the admission process is complete, then, since the students do get decentralized into the colleges, and then, they are broken up into a smaller subsets. So naturally, it becomes a little easier to deal. So I'm not talking about the 60,000 students, but, I'm talking about, say, at the most 60 students, per teacher. University of Delhi, in fact, had also adopted this last year, that starting, with the research students, allowing them to come to the campus, and specifically, the students of these sciences, who needed to complete certain, experimentation to complete their PhD work. Then, trickling down to the postgraduate final year students, and even the undergraduate, students, specifically to those students, where they needed to come to do the practicals. Say, for example, if I talk about my discipline, mathematics, so that is something, that maybe the practicals in mathematics, I'm able to perform without actually being into the boundaries of the university. Because all I need is my software and my, a computer maybe, and nowadays even some of the apps are available on the mobile for me to conduct those, experiments. But if you talk about the students of the pure sciences, which happens to be, say, chemistry or your physics or the bio stream, where they actually need to do it by hand. So the university had allowed, that within a time frame and in a staggered manner again, that, the teacher can call 10 students on one day and the next 10 students on the other day, so that, they're able to complete these practicals, and they are just called only specifically focused on finishing their practicals, and then, then moving back and having the next round of students coming in. So the university had adopted that because there are some things, which right now I don't think so it'll be feasible if we talk only in terms of, having to do with online teaching or, online discourses. If I talk with my research scholar, as I told you, that the need of the discipline also makes a difference in, in my case, in my discipline, I may be able to do it completely online. But if I talk about chemistry, if I talk about physics, there it's very important that, that even a research scholar is there in his or her research lab, to complete the work that is being done. So those kinds of things, yes, actually personally, I was hoping that by the time we have the next academic session, maybe things will start turning into the normal, but I think we're in a long run now for something to turn back to what was the conventional and what we thought about it as normal, to return back to it, it might take some time.
And yes, as rightly said, it's just not about students coming. They might come in batches in the classes. It's not, working models in schools is easier, but working it in universities is very difficult because you can't stop students coming to the university. You can stop them from, social distancing can happen within the four walls of the class, but then once you open, then you actually open a Pandora's box. So yes, those are the things we'll have to. My next question is to you, Shobha ji. Now, that many universities have their admission offers to candidates based on, performance in the remotely proctored entrance exams like G, SAT, and APT, and based on personal interviews that we were talking about. Now, when you look at, there is a lot of talk, and we've been deliberating on it, that, entrance, some kind of an entrance exam has to be, taken into consideration. And we are constantly talking about anxiety, student anxiety, so much so that our Prime Minister said that, cancellation of board examination, one of the key reasons was to settle the anxiety which was prevailing among the parents and the students. Wouldn't then this lead to anxiety among the students? Because most of them were probably not even prepared, and preparing overnight would be difficult. And if we prepare an easier exam paper, then that would not again be a justifiable thing. So what choices are we left with? Again, how will this is too cliched. We do talk about a model, and then we again come back and
in fact, the whole scenario that has come out in 2021, after cancellation of the board examination, And then, you read about the fear or the anxiety, as you might say, it of the student that, we had been preparing only for the board examination. And now at this stage, to say that you're going to have a certain percentage of class 10th and class 11th, when we were not very serious about it, I think that puts a very big question mark on our complete education system per se. On one hand, we talk about that there has to be a continuous assessment, a continuous evaluation. Yes. But are we also talking about that the student has to have a continuous learning process also? And should the learning process, be marked only by one end examination? Because I somehow feel that, if the education system was, where the student was learning continuously, and any examination which is there is actually based on what you have learned, it's more conceptual, I don't think so, that fear or that anxiety would have ever come. But having talked about that, maybe it's a very, very idealistic situation. We also need to be very practical as to what the scenario right now is and how do we answer about that. And as you have rightly said, that on one hand, where the students are, the anxiety of their board examinations being held, because, if you go by the last year experience, so, the students were always, okay, my 2 or 3 papers are left. Okay, after 1 month, I'm going to have my examination. So let me sit and prepare. Then it got postponed, and then, there is a sort of a rhythm that is built, and, even when we have gone through the board examination process, so during those 15, 16 days, there is a momentum. You're preparing for one subject, that one subject is over, you're preparing for the second subject, and so on and so forth. And the students totally lost that momentum. So that way, where one anxiety has been settled, I think the students have become more anxious about the admission process, for a higher degree. And when you talk about the proctored examination, so say, for example, JEE, not many students, who are aspiring even to do their, they follow their undergraduate courses in pure sciences. Because I know a number of students, at least, who come to the University of Delhi, they are absolutely clear in their mind that, they want to follow pure sciences subjects, say, for example, physics or chemistry or even mathematics, and they do not want to go into the engineering stream. So they don't appear for the JEE examination. And the JEE examination, if I'm not wrong, out of the 4 phases, 2 had been conducted. And 2, I think, were yet to be done, because JEE had planned to have, 4 such entrance tests this year, which was an excellent idea. But again, because of this pandemic, now the students who have not given that, SAT, in fact, they generally gave if they have wanted to go outside. So at this stage, many students had not thought about it this year, that, either of these proctor's tests could be considered, as a way of the admissions to their, higher education, to the undergraduate program, which they needed to follow. So at this stage, to inculcate that, I do not think so. Personally, I would like to, go in for that. It's much better that even at this stage, if we can have some sort of a common entrance test, and when you talk about making it very easy, I somehow feel that, if there are certain conceptual, what we call as basically is, the situation based questions, they are very difficult to frame, but that does not require much of a rote learning. It's much of an understanding of a problem. That would of course be an ideal conditions if those kinds of entrance tests could be prepared, where a student actually sits in the examination hall, reads the question, reads the context, and then applies it with whatever knowledge he has gained over the past 10, 11 or 12 years of schooling.
Right, well said. That we'll have to change the pattern of the entrance exam. It's not about making it easy or making it tough. It's about making it based on conceptual clarity. Since we are running short of time, I would ask a common question, and that's a related question to all the 3 our panelists. Considering that CBSE has released, and that's something which I've been, queries have been coming to me, and this was a question which actually a few students asked me to address in the webinar. Now, CBSE released the scheme to calculate grade 12 marks earlier this week, and the marks for the theory component will be calculated as to 40, 30, 30 ratio formula based on the student's performance in class 12, 11, and 10 respectively. Now, this has come suddenly. While some of the people are welcoming it, of course, there are those people, as I said, we as an educator, we should not be talking about good and bad students, but performers and students who took, did not perform so well. So what are your thoughts on that? And considering that when the child comes from class 10 to class 11, there is a change. Suddenly he's into a new stream. So class 10th is that year where the student takes a lot of time in understanding the scheme, in, settling with the stream. And then he picks up towards the end of class 11th or probably the beginning of class 12. So what are your thoughts about this kind of a structure? And would this be of any help in the admission process? That's my question to from where I left to Shobhaji, and then I'll move on to the other panelists. Yes.
The situation is not very idealistic. So I don't think so. The solution, as I said, you always want a certain ideal situation. But given the prevailing situation, that may not be possible. So, I think the CBSE and the MHRD must have certainly thought this over, with certain educators, and come out with this formula. And I am of the opinion that if, it is disadvantageous to a certain section, it is uniformly disadvantageous to everybody. So at the end of it, once when you are doing the calculation, that uniformity cancels out, because, if there are certain section of the students, whose percentage are, and when I talk about the merit-based admission, so if their percentage is coming down, it will be uniformly coming down, for the whole section. So, at the end, it might not make too much of a difference, and when we talk in terms of mathematics, so, my standard deviations may not be too much, if I adopt this process together, in fact. So, in the want of anything else, I think it's an excellent formula that they have come up with.
What are your views about the same, Dr. Arya? About this 40% marks from grade 12, 11, 30% of 11th, another 30 from class 10. So it will be a very something, student profiling, something which we would want to create a kind of a model or a module for the coming admission processes. What is your take on this criteria that CBSE is suggestive of?
Regarding CBSE's criteria which has come up, I think there is no other option at this stage, because we have to declare the results in time, and in this situation, there is no other things. Probably CBSE and MHRD has definitely consulted with academicians in this regard, and this is the only solution at this stage, what I feel. There might be not be all stakeholders are happy with it. This is not good for the students and parents, but there is no other option than this.
So, moving on to Chaitanya ji, your views and your suggestion that if you want to tweak this ratio, I would be very open to hearing it out, that any suggestion to CBSE, we would want to tweak it, or we would want to add on to this. If you could come up with a structure with this 40:30:30 formula released by CBSE. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. But see, the most interesting thing what ma'am has suggested, how do we make sure that the students are coming out of that kind of a mugging up of syllabus or content, and how can we make sure that they are able to apply it actually. For example, let me just tell you, now this physics and chemistry, the whole year has been totally virtual. So there is no they don't understand experiments, or they may not be exposed to the kind of experiments they used to do in the lab. So how do we evaluate them? So as Professor Arya said, I think this is the best combination. But of course, if it is possible, especially during the situations, my suggestion is that we have to have a mechanism where the teachers are trained to conduct some sessions. In fact, I saw few questions here in the chat box. Teachers are asking, how do we assess the students if it is online? So that kind of practical measures which teachers can adopt, because I know a large number of teachers are struggling a lot with a lot of the academic and administrative work, and they may not be able to fully focus on real teaching. You understand? So how is it possible that we can reduce that administrative workload and bring them to more into teaching, so that they can always survive on a blended type of learning, and make sure that at least in 11th and 12th standard, the students are given projects, or the evaluation has to be strictly according to the case studies, real-time case studies, or on the based on the research papers published by these by the professors, because there are a lot of research being happening in different domains. So let them be exposed, because that is the bread and butter for a university, for a higher education institution. If we are getting the students with the right knowledge, and see, for example, as ma'am said, we don't know who are deserving. Unless otherwise you expose them to large possibilities, let them choose whatever they want. So that kind of a structure has to happen. So that will definitely add on to the advantage of a common entrance examination. See, we all talk about cracking of entrance. Students come and ask me how to crack entrance. See, you can crack entrance, but what will happen once you join a college? You will not be able to crack it, because you have to go through that academic process, the continuous evaluation. So that is more important. So rather than cracking, let them understand concept, let them apply the concept, and let them have the practical or real-time application knowledge of what they have learned, which is very, very crucial. So that has to be adopted in one way or the other. Maybe a certain percentage is enough. For example, let us say out of 100 marks, maybe 20 marks we have to make sure that they are undergoing through a project. See, because if you just take take websites, COVID-19 indiainfo.org, you can see a lot of mathematical visualizations. So let them be exposed to that, because we don't know where these matrices are applied, or where these mathematical concepts are applied. Let them learn. Let them be exposed to what is real-time application of what they learn. And this is the right time which we can definitely expose them, because there is a lot of content available in the internet. And I feel that if the school teachers are ready to take up that kind of a responsibility in doing some online research when they get time, and prepare a kind of lesson plan where the students are also exposed to that will help a lot. And my suggestion is, we have to think of those who will pass out in 2022 and 2023, not this year, because this year is out of hands. We can't do anything much about it. So what about those who are currently in 10th and 11th and 12th?
So you're okay with the 40s to 30s to 30, or probably it could be a 50s to 20s to 30, because it's class 11. And I'm actually concerned about the science stream, because sciences stream are based on practical, practicals. And that is where somewhere the online teaching, because about 40% of the time goes in lab.
Yeah.
So there it's something. In fact, I got to know, and I was reading about your OLab, which you have, which Amrita has introduced.
Yes.
And it was something very interesting.
Exactly.
So if you could just, in a Bite, tell us about the OLAB that
So basically virtual labs is nothing but we had developed way back in 2015 or 16, where it was an aid for the students to learn about mathematical and chemical experiments. So it is basically a virtual lab. Virtual lab in the sense they can do some concentration here and there using computers and things and visualization, and it will give the exact result. And of course, that is definitely not a replacement for the real experiments. Let me tell you, it is definitely an aid for the teachers to maybe learn more, make the students learn more. But on the other hand, let us say if somebody who has learned, now we can see a lot of videos circulated in WhatsApp on how the future engineers will be. So things will be like that. So let us not think from that point of view. Let us take the online tools as an aid to teach, not to replace whatever we have been practicing for years. But at the same time, they have to be exposed to whatever is available. So that is more important and critical. And when you ask this question, I'm sure that Shobha ma'am has something to say because she was smiling.
Yes, Shobha ji. Yes, all yes to you. Yes, please.
So, incidentally, in fact, the center I am at, what we are facing right now, it was based on that pedagogy way back in 2011, lots of project, the assessment basically being done by the project-based learning. And, the question I think somebody asked on the chat boxes that how do we assess the students online, so we had been doing online assessments again way back since 2011. And even this year, the course I'm teaching the first year students, so I had this, because let's be very, very honest with ourselves. If you give them a written assignments and expect them to do it themselves, without consulting each other and submitting a similar kind of paper, maybe it's not possible. You give them a test paper, you have so much WhatsApp and mobile app, jitna marzi proctored kar lo, nahi ho pata hai. So let's take that as an assumption that the students are going to consult each other, or they may be consulting the websites or this thing. So with that,
let me just come to the, because these are what you're saying. I will be addressing the question to you because we have audience questions which you panelists have been reading. And so question from the audience round, which is Q&A round. Jaya, the question is from Ms. Jaya Lakshmi Pillai. She says, according to national education policy, marks should have less criteria, but concept is more important. What should be the criteria for admission of higher education where concept is evaluated? So I think Shobha ji was talking about the concept to be introduced in entrance exams. So very quickly, Shobha ji. Yes.
So, if I talk only about the entrance examination, or even if I talk about, maybe the class 11th, class 12th, or even the college examination, if the question paper is so prepared, which is contextual in nature, I remember having been teaching linear programming, once to my class. So in my complete question paper, had just a simple one case study, and in which, with different variations, all the conceptual questions were asked, one by one, that what happens if this is the change that is made. But, to be absolutely honest, it takes a lot of effort on the part of the teachers to do it. And it's a similar kind of the conceptual, contextual entrance test, that what I was actually proposing, that instead of having, question that choose the correct answer, you have a paragraph, you read it, you understand it, connect to what you have learned, and then answer a series of maybe 5 or 6 questions. Yeah. That is an idealistic situation. Whether we'll be able to reach that, in the near future or not, I do not know. But at least let's give it a try for that.
I'm sure our viewer would have got the answer, and I think it was a very apt answer. Next question is by Ms. Mitali Bhattacharya. How can students in grade 12 be awakened to structuring new ways in building their career in the next 4 years? I think I would like to address this question to Chaitanya ji because I've been hearing him talk on careers. So yes, Chaitanya ji.
Ma'am, I will just leave it to Shobha ma'am, but let me add on what she told just now. That is the important thing, because see, we have to be honest as teachers. We have to be very honest. Teaching is not just a secondary job, or teaching has to be full time. Full time in the sense that we have to keep on thinking on how to make the course delivery effective. So, see, how do we awaken the children? We have to wake up first. First of all, we have to wake up as teachers. So, as she rightly said, it is our struggle. We have to keep thinking on how to improve. Rightly pointed, exactly the same way I used to put my question papers. There will be only one question in my question paper, which there will be sub questions like 2 or 3, and I have even given wrong questions to make sure that students think. The reason is that is how the teaching evolves. See, our objective is to make them think rather than getting the right answer. That is more crucial. Of course, getting right answer is very important, but we have to make them think. So the first thing is that the future career has to be totally dependent on the passion of the children. And every teacher teaching the class 10th 9 10 11 12, they have to understand how the students behave, or what is the kind of interest or passion, what is their talent, what is their skill, and accordingly we have to nurture them. That's the only option, I think. Just a small point which I wanted to add. Let us say, if I am teaching physics, if I am teaching mathematics, if I am teaching English, if I am teaching humanities courses, you take any course, a lot of materials are available now in the internet. So it takes some time for the teacher to actually find out the right material, ask the students to explore, and come up with the proper assignments. And let us not give the same question to all the students. I used to prepare 30 questions for one class, and I was handling something like 70 to 80 students in a class, and I used to prepare 30 questions way back in 2008 and 9. So that is how we put more and more effort, and I'm sure that over a period of time, maybe 1 year or 2 years time, we will get well versed with the system, and it will be easy for us to learn. But those first 2 or 3 years, it is totally a task. It is challenging, but ultimately we feel satisfied, we feel fulfilled, because we are doing justice to the job of teaching. Because when we call teaching, we are basically imparting some knowledge. It is not just instruction. So that is very important. So let us be honest about on what we do. That is very critical. Yes, ma'am.
So thank you so much. And I think that was the bottom line, which I would sum it like, for educators that need to reform, perform, and transform themselves to teach the 21st century student, because it's all about hybrid learning. It's very challenging. Teaching last 20 years has seen a paradigm shift. And so we need to equip ourselves. I think we come to the end of this session. It has been a great and very enriching session. Thank you so much, Dr. B.L. Arya, Ms. Shobha Bagai, and Brother Chaitanya ji, for your great insights. And I'm sure the audience would have had a great takeaway from this session. And thank you so much, our audience. You were watching a web series produced by Edudevs School of Inspired Teaching and Learning and powered by Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham under the name of Decoding National Education Policy 2020 Higher Ed. Next episode would be exploring some of the opportunities and challenges that the higher educations are facing in the post-pandemic situation. Thank you so much, all our esteemed panelists. Thank you.